So when you tell a story from beginning, middle, and end, it releases chemicals in our brains, me as an audience. And I start putting myself in your shoes. It's like, don't go in the woods. There's bad things in the woods. All of a sudden you're telling a story about Little Red Riding Hood. And I'm like, I'm her. And I'm like, I don't want to go in the woods. Like, I don't want to wear that red cape. I'm worried about grandma. What do I do? And so you get this compassion element. I feel connected to you. I lean into the conversation and I find a commonality with you. So we get bonded through stories, through chemicals in our brains. And the more personal it is, the tighter the relationship.
Pat, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I am doing awesome. Thank you.
I can't believe it's been like 6, nearly 7 years since we did our last episode. How crazy is that? The time flies.
Oh my, that long. Oh my goodness.
I know. It's crazy, right? I think you've been in a couple different roles since then, and then like maybe it's only fitting that I catch you on one of your first days in the new role. So maybe let's start there. And so before we get there, tell everyone a little bit more about you personally, because I think that informs sort of your background, especially the journey in your book we're going to talk about, and then the role that you're in now. So give everyone a bit of background and then we can jump in.
So, as you know, I geek out on all things talent. And so I have the privilege of being the head of HR, the people team at Intuitive. They used to be referred to as Intuitive Surgical. You might have heard of them. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's all about serving the employees and having a platform to drive healthy companies. I'm super excited about this gig because it gets me in the Bay Area in California. As you know, I have a couple of kids in the Bay Area and now 2 grandchildren. And so I actually have an apartment probably a mile away from all of them. So nice. I'm close enough not to be called a stalker-ish mom, but close enough to be a great grandma.
Yeah. What is the good distance for that? Because if you're like down the street on the road, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so I had to weigh my options, how close is too close.
Yeah, you've made a mistake there, because what's going to happen now, which is what me and Tasha do with our daughter Robin, you're close enough that they can give you the last minute calls for babysitting. So now you have to prepare yourself for, hey, we're just thinking about going here. Do you mind taking the grandkids? So you got that Yay. As well. So you say yay now, and they're going to be asking loads, and then you're going to be like, oh, okay. But that's amazing. So for context for everyone, I think a lot of your previous roles as CHRO, as CPO, has taken you all over the world, but in many cases that required a lot of travel, right?
Yes.
So it's nice now at this point in your life with the grandkids and everything to have some quality time.
Absolutely. The prior gig at UKG was wonderful. Talent space, talent technology, they're amazing. But they're primarily based on the East Coast. I'm a West Coast family-based person. And so coastal travel, if anyone's done it, is really hard. I would track myself 10 hours door to door just for a normal commute week.
Wow.
And then you add in international travel and time away from the fam bam. It takes a toll, and I want to be there in those moments hey, I'm going to drop off Everly, and so I can go even to Safeway or grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or something. I want that to happen.
Amazing. No, Sue, I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. And you just definitely after the career, obviously I know you're not retiring, but I mean, at this point, you want to make sure you spend those years go by so quickly. So you want to be present for them. Everyone said that to me with Robin, and now she's already 6, and I'm just like, wow, she's growing up so fast.
My grandson's 6 months old. He's rolling around. He's so mobile, and I'm wait till he crawls, then he's gonna walk, and I don't want to miss any of that.
Yeah, you have an interesting story and journey as well, because all of the companies, or most of the companies you work with, have served both sides. So if you started at LinkedIn, and I think it was ServiceNow, then UKG, then now. But so those 3 companies, they are both providing solutions to HR executives, and then you were also living on the inside of those. So how interesting was that? What are some of the lessons that you learned from working in those environments all those years?
I think I cut my teeth at LinkedIn on that.
Yeah,
Chris, because what I realized early was everyone, and I remember being at an offsite, everyone had an opinion about talent, like how to coach or mentor or performance manage or comp. Like everyone was an expert around me. And I'm like, this is so odd. I've never been in an organization that every leader, every manager thought they were the expert. And so we had a conversation and we, I'm like, look, you're not, we got to align on the philosophy. And so as one company, I like my analogies touch the elephant. And so like if we are one company, we're the elephant, like what are we creating together? Like you can't have a separate performance management philosophy over here, here, and here. Like we had, if there were 10 leaders, we had 6 different review processes and 5 different comp philosophies. And so my job was to corral all of that passion into a shared vision. And then that shared vision created opportunity to share that with our customers. And then I fell in love with the customers because I got to help solve employee challenges and talent brand challenges. And I got to meet so many incredible people. And as an introvert, it forced me out of my shell and meet people from Europe and Asia and all over the place, and companies and finance and fashion. It was
Wow.
just wild. And so that's been a passion. It's been fun.
It's cool, right? Because you get like this ripple effect where you have the impact that you're making for your employees that you serve, but then now through your customers and partners, there's another ripple effect of impact that you're having even broaden that, which I'm sure is very exciting to be able to have that. And it's interesting you mentioned you're an introvert because that was something we discussed in our first ever episode. Because I remember you telling me that LinkedIn asked you to start doing some speaking and presenting. And I remember you told me how overwhelmed, if I remember this correctly, sorry if I'm making this up, but it was so long ago, that you're like all of a sudden, and because you were one of the first public facing, public speaking leaders that I came across in the HR space. And that was something that I think you said the founders approached you about and said, hey, we want you out there. And so I think, is it a misconception that people shocked when they hear that you're an introvert? Is that something? Because
Yes, I had an argument with Jeff Weiner. He was the CEO at LinkedIn. And I'm like, he was like, I need you to be like my business partner. I need
yeah,
to run HR for LinkedIn. And then I need you to be this external facing, speaking, engaging person. I'm like, no. I'm like, no. And then he was like, what do you mean no? And I'm like, I could do the first 2 really well, but not that third thing. That's like a unicorn. I'm a horse. I do those first 2 things. And so
yeah,
he's like, no, you're going to do that third thing. And I'm like, I'm an introvert. I can't. And he goes, you're not an introvert. You're lying. And I said, I'm not lying. I know where I get my energy, Jeff. And he was like, no, you show up in a room and you can talk. And I'm like, I know I can talk, but it takes a lot of energy. And so I had to express where I get my energy from and how I process. And he used to have us in staff meetings do brainstorming. And if anyone's listening as an introvert, you know how much we love
yeah. Love that
brainstorming.
environment. yeah,
Love it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I would be like, Jeff would go like, Waters, what do you think? And I'm like, I can't, I need time to process. He goes, Waters, tell me what you think. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to give you a scale from 1 to 10. I'm thinking this as a 6 level. If I get more information, I might get up to an 8 level and give you more information. So I started gauging how much information I processed to get around that brainstorm
Yeah.
problem. But
Back then, it was quite uncommon though for HR executives to be front facing. Now it's common practice, and many companies are really asking their people leaders to be out there. Why is that important? Do you think?
well, it unlocks the talent brand, right? There's a source of truth and there's a vision that you put out there and a strategy you put out there, and um, you got to walk the talk. And so for me, it's like I looked at our LinkedIn profiles of every company and say, how are my employees representing the company? What are they saying? How do they feel? What gets them excited? I look at survey data and sentiment and look at the employee experience. And if the head of HR is out there, with values and principles and a statement and a mission, it's easier to figure out, do I belong there? Will I have an impact there? Is this something I want to, believe in and trust as an employee? It helps.
Yeah.
It just helps. And so if you're a trusted HR leader, then the talent in your area will like, I know so and so, and JP Morgan Chase or Nordstrom or Starbucks. You know the environment, you know the culture they're building, you get the ecosystem. And I think it just helps with recruiting, it helps with retention, it helps with succession planning,
Yeah.
the board engagement, just helps.
Yeah. I had one of the CHROs join me from DHL recently, and she called me and said, "You never guess what, Chris?" And I said, "What?" She's like, "After our episode, we just hired our new CMO because she heard our episode." And she said, "That's the kind of company I want to work for." And I thought that was so
Wow.
cool. I was like, wow, like that's to your exact point. And we was talking around well-being and a lot around DEI on the episode, and that person just happens to be looking at a new role, and they came across it on LinkedIn and was like, that's the kind of place I want to work. That's the kind of leader I want to work with. So just
See?
to give people the idea, like who listening, that's a practical example that, and I hear that a lot. But listen, I want to jump into your new book. When I saw this pop up on LinkedIn, I was like, it's about time. And I'm joking. Unlock your leadership story, how to build understanding and motivate teams using fables and folktales. Start from the beginning. What was the inspiration behind the book? Did you plan on even writing one? Because sometimes these things can just happen. Talk us through it, and then we'll jump in more.
All right, so I never planned on it. I've been asked a couple of times to co-write books with some peers, and I write the way I talk. So if any of y'all have seen my writing on LinkedIn, the way I talk is the way I write. And a lot of communications or marketing people try to edit my voice to make it more proper when you write. And I'm like, I don't speak like that. So I need it to be authentically me. And so if I was going to co-write with somebody, I always felt awkward. And being an operator, I didn't know where I'd find the time to write a book. And I didn't have like all these constraints I put in front of myself, Chris. I can't. And then last year, Wiley Publishing approached me in August and said, "Hey, would you like to write a book?" And I actually laughed. And I'm just like,
I can imagine your reaction. You're like, me? I ain't got time. What do you mean? What would I talk about? Yeah.
exactly, all those things. And I said, and on top of all that, I'm a dyslexic. So, I could just imagine being nervous transposing all my letters and writing terribly. And so
I'm
I'm
dyslexic
like,
as well, by the way, so I know exactly how you feel, and that's where I lean on Shane, my co-founder. He sits there and helps me out with a lot of that stuff, contracts and writing stuff up, because it's super stressful.
yes, it
As well.
takes time.
And energy, to your point back that you mentioned earlier, like I'm drained. Like there's so much, and he's like, "Oh, this is easy." I'm like, "Cool, we work well
No.
too." Go on, carry on. Sorry.
That's okay. But so you get it. So she, like Lee was on the phone and she's like, "Will you write a book about HR?" And I'm like, "No, I can't." And she's like, "What do you mean you can't?" I said, "Well, I won't. I'll change my word. I won't. The reason why I won't is there's a lot of amazing practitioners out there that probably have better stories. I know they do. Um, Better tools. Like there's such a wealth of information already out there. Go there, right? Go listen and learn. And if you want to learn from me on a certain process, I have an open door. I've shared everything. I'm so transparent. I don't think a book will help that move that needle forward. So no, thank you." And she goes, "All right, if you were to write a book, what would you write about? Anything you want to write about, what would you write about?" I'm like,
Wow.
wow, exactly. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no one's ever asked me that.
Good job on them.
So,
Good. By the way, just take a second. Good job on them. Good job on them for not being like, all right, no worries, all the best. Like they
yeah,
took the time to ask that question. Imagine how many missed opportunities or moments that we don't ask questions like that. If you could, what would that be? Remove all of the restraints.
all of it.
What would that be? We should ask that question to people more often. Sorry, I think that's an important moment. Yeah, go on, carry
It
on.
was for me. And it took me, quite honestly, almost 6 weeks, 7 weeks to think through. And because if I was going to think of something, I had to write an outline, like the purpose of the book, and then the outline of how I think our story arc would go and submit that. And then a bunch of strangers, editors would, managers would review my proposal and then say yay or nay. So now not only was I going to use my own voice, but now I'm going to like be judged. So
Bit of
there's like a lot of
vulnerability.
fear.
Mm.
Yeah. And so the thing that came into my head was I teach and think in stories. I talk about touching the elephant. I talk about Goldilocks and the three bears and finding a just right fit. I've done it for decades, Chris. If I struggle with a philosophy or an approach, I anchor it against a fable or a folktale. And I go, look, don't be the emperor with new clothes. You don't want to be naked out there in work. You want to know what people are saying. You want to get feedback. You want to be able to give feedback. And so what does that mean? And so as soon as I use this anchor moment, light bulbs go off. And so I'm like, I'm going to write a book of leadership and personal stories to create your best version. Anchoring against fables and folktales, all things I've been teaching about. And I'll pick my favorites and see what they think. And I tested out some of these fables with some peers of mine, some coworkers I worked with along the years. And I'm like, what would you think of the three pigs? What do you think about the crow and the pebbles? What do you think about so and so? And how would you interpret the moral of that story today? It was a fabulous conversation. I'm like, this is it. This is what I want to write about. Submitted it. And they're like, done. Like, when you want to get it done by? I'm like, I don't know. I calculate in my head a chapter a week. Maybe I can, work on the weekends or on my plane flights. I got a lot of plane hours. So I can write on the plane April 1st. So I signed the contract Thanksgiving, end of November, and submitted it actually mid-April. I extended it by 2 weeks, worried I wouldn't have enough time.
That's incredible because, and just for people listening, we had a lot of authors in the show. Sometimes they're working on these books for years, literally, and that's their full-time gig to do that. So that's incredible. What I love about that is I'm also like you. I learn through stories and also through art. So when me and Shane wrote our vision for the business for the next couple of years, I did a painting of that. And that painting represented our journey because I connect with that so much more than if it was a bunch of bullet points on where we're going. And it's the same reason that stories and fables have withstood the test of time and have lasted hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. Because as human beings, that's exactly, and I'm sure many of your peers can recite those from previous companies that you worked in, and Pat would say X, and this is what that means, right? And it also removes all the complicated, like you kind of distill it down to something that people can go, oh, okay, I get that as well. And then you can have a conversation around it more easily together as well. So I love the fact that it's tough as well because there's so many leadership books and other things out there as well that you've created quite a unique lens on how you deliver it. Let's jump into some of your favorites then. Some of your favorite stories from the book that we can share with the listeners to give them a bit of a taste of what to expect.
Okay. So I'll start with probably three. One is the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So Goldie came into my head when I was in college, trying to figure out my just right fit, what I liked, what I didn't like. So I'm like, I am like Goldilocks. But then she came to life when I was at Applied Materials because I saw so many of my peers, especially women, that would be tapped on their shoulder to do another job. Like they might be in manufacturing, like, oh, you'd be really great in material handling, or you'd be great over here in marketing or whatever. And I would see these, older, mature leaders going, how in the heck did I end up in marketing? I wanted to be in finance. Or I wanted to be an analyst, and now I'm like writing stories. And I heard this so often. I'm like, well, then how did you end up here? And like, well, so-and-so saw something in me and they needed me to do this. They needed me. I'm like, I want to lead my own career. Like I get where you need me or want me. That's awesome. That means I built a superpower, but where do I want to grow and learn? And so I took coaching and I took this class called Managing Your Personal Growth. And Goldilocks kept coming to my head. And so Goldie is really about not breaking and entering a cottage. I don't condone that, but I do condone every job that you take teaches you something, what you like and what you don't like. Because another frustrating thing is that, especially with, mother of millennials, they're like, find your passion, like pursue your passion. They don't know what they love yet. They haven't tasted.
Oh my God, you use the exact word I used when I said, you got to taste as many things as possible, and then no one knows. I didn't know I'd be doing this. If you ask me, I'll be.
No one knows.
All my friends and family still don't understand what I do for a living. They're like, how have you ended up there? Well, I tasted loads of different things, and then I found the thing that really I enjoyed as well.
That's your Goldilocks, right? So you figured out your just right fit by what you like and what you don't like. And same thing with leadership traits. I learned more from a crappy manager than I did from great ones because I didn't know how they were great. Sometimes when something goes flawless, it makes me nervous, Chris. Like,
Ah,
I don't know how that happened. But when something breaks and I have to deconstruct it and fix it, it gets more in my DNA. So good and bad are so important to learn from. So I love Goldie. And then I give you a framework of Goldilocks, like how to create your own Goldilocks spreadsheet, like know your values and your motivators. A lot of like knowing what yourself is really important. We don't spend enough time doing that and codifying those experiences and our superpowers and things we want to learn. And how do we map our current gig to those elements? And I've coached so many people through the spreadsheet, Chris, and every time they're like, this is hard. And then when they get through, like, this is so clarifying. It helps me when I interview. It helps me pick the next job. It helps me know when I'm going to apply to something. Gives me courage to raise my hand for that promo. So Goldilocks is one of my favorites. The other one is touching the elephant. It's the elephant and the blind men, where they come in and they're asked to touch an animal or a thing and describe it, and they describe it as a sail or a snake or a trunk of a tree or something else or a barrel, and they argue and argue because they can't see the whole elephant. And it wasn't until this one man starts asking questions. Well, why do you think it's a sail? Why do you think it's a snake? Why do you think it's a trunk? What do you feel? What do you sense? Can you feel further? And together they learn that it's a bigger thing. And so I learned the value of questions, seeking to understand, like be confident in what you're touching for sure, but then seek to understand and be humble that you might not have all the facts. And at ServiceNow, this came to light because you had a lot of experienced leaders and some new leaders coming in and very strong personalities. And we wanted to build a new team. And as a leadership tenant, we decided to own the statement called argue like you're right, but listen like you're wrong.
love that.
So come to the table, Chris, argue like you're right. Bring your data, bring your wisdom, your experience, your intuition, even. I want to hear that too. But then sit back and ask questions. What did I miss? What would you do differently? Help me, what did you like? Listen like you're wrong. Be humble enough to know you may not see the whole elephant. So that's one of my favorites.
I love that because there's a temptation, even if you know you're right or you have the information, that you just dismiss the other people and then you kind of move forward, but you're missing a massive opportunity to understand their perspective, where they're coming from, and that you learn a lot about. Oh, so that's why you thought that, or that's where and a lot of times we're like rushing through the process or tempted just to be like, no, that's how we're doing it. And this, I learned that with my team the hard way as a leader, just to sort of, even if I have a perspective, just don't rush in and just listen and let everyone go through. You learn so much. And they're also way more engaged in the future, to be open,
Yes.
bring ideas to the table, be vulnerable, to your point earlier. If you don't create that space, you're just missing a massive opportunity. You're almost taking away the opportunity for them to grow and develop and provide their if we talk about neurodiversity, for example, to bring their eyes and thoughts to the table. I love that. That one's really cool.
You nailed it.
I never heard of that analogy before. That story, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So that's a new one for me. So you explained it really well. I didn't have any questions after you explained it. And I think that perfectly describes the current landscape we're in, especially HR leaders right now. It's so chaotic. There's so many different, you've got politics, you've got wars, you've got hybrid work, you've got all these, like, you can never, you can reach out and touch, right? But you never really know the full picture, to your point. So you constantly got to be asking questions. I think that you got AI.
Yes.
There's so much. So that's a really great story to encapsulate the environment that we're in right now. But and there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be another one that comes.
Always something new.
Yeah.
Stay humble. And so, like, my teams will say, one of my statements, my favorite things is like, a question is your best tool as leaders. A question is better than a statement. Mm-hmm. A question unlocks learning and engagement and trust. Like, just ask a question and be sincere, be willing to listen to the answers. So love the elephant. And then there is the tortoise and the hare. So I rewrite the story a little bit. I write the fable so everyone understands what the fable is if they've never heard it before. Then I give the moral lesson.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah. And I give the moral of the lesson from my interpretation. And for me, the tortoise, she's a she, and she lives by her own scorecard. She knows she's slower than the hare, but she doesn't care because in her personal life, she loves to run. She loves to compete. She loves a challenge. And so those are her personal values, her scorecard. And so she decides to run this race, and the hare, mimics her and makes fun of her, and she doesn't care. She's just slow and steady, and she's like, I'm enjoying the race my way. And then when the hare falls asleep because he's kind of cocky, she wins the race. And the analogy for me, the moral of the story is that she won she lived her scorecard. Every day she showed up and lived her scorecard. And that's so incredibly powerful. And so I talk about a personal scorecard. Like, I want to wake up in the morning living my values. I believe in family first. I believe in being authentically me. I like blah, blah, blah. And so did I live it or did I not live it? That's super important.
At what point in your career did you come across that concept of having a personal scorecard? Because that might be an unfamiliar concept to some people listening.
Well, it didn't happen in my career. It happened personally first. So I had my values. So if you remember with Goldilocks, one of the tasks I set for myself is to understand my values and my motivators.
Okay.
And I put it on my spreadsheet. So I kind of knew what they were. And I made decisions thinking about them. But I didn't think of it as a scorecard until I really was challenged with my husband on a personal issue, or trying to figure out how to care for his dad. His dad was ill, had cancer. We're trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. Do we take care of him? Who's the caretaker? We had young kids. There was a lot of complexity in there. And so like we'd have to change how we lived or do different things to support him. And what would the family and other members do? And one day we were like struggling with the decision, and we just looked at each other. I'm like, well, what's our personal scorecard? What are our values together?
Wow.
And it unlocked an amazing conversation. And so I'm like, here's my values. And so if I really believe these values, then the answer is kind of simple. We do X, Y, and Z. And he goes like, I agree. Let's stop the noise of whatever like everyone else does is up to them. What we do is our scorecard. I'm like, bingo. And then, I've been pursuing that scorecard. And even today, like if Dave and I are struggling with the decision, he goes, what's our personal scorecard tell us to do?
Yeah.
Like the decision to change jobs was a personal scorecard.
I love this so much, and I only came across this, or me and Shane kind of described it as our sort of purpose mission statement, both personally and professionally, and we kind of like look at it as our foundation of decision making. Because, like, let me give you a perfect example. During the pandemic, the whole world was telling us furlough your employees, do this, do this, do this, and then me and Shane kind of looked at that first through the lens of fear. What are we going to do? We're losing money. And they were like, how do we make decisions based on when there's so much uncertainty? And we made decisions based on those principles and our beliefs. So then you just remove the chaos, because there's always going to be more chaos. You remove all the noise, and we make decisions from that place. And we decided to keep everyone, reimagine the business, go digital, etc. And it was one of the best decisions we ever made. If we would have made the decision based on the media, the politics, the fear, everything else, we wouldn't be here right now. There would be no company. We would have went out of business 100%, as well. And that's something that's been massive for us personally and professionally. What I haven't done as much, to your point, which I think I'm going to do now, is have more of a deeper conversation around that with my wife. So me and Shane have that conversation a lot, but something that I've learned on this podcast that I'm going to take away is, yes, we have conversations, but through the lens, not in the way through the lens that you're describing. I think that'd be really helpful for us, because we also struggle. My wife's building her own company. I'm doing this, obviously HR leaders. We've got a 6-year-old daughter. We've also got our parents as well. We were recently, Shane, my co-founder, he was caring for his granddad who's got dementia. That we had to work around some complexities around that. And if you don't have that scorecard or foundation to make decisions based on those things, it gets really tough, and you'll make it
Really
you'll make it out of emotion or fear, and that normally doesn't result well. as well. And then some non-negotiables, right? So now I have non-negotiables based on those conversations in my calendar. So my EA knows, don't book things during these times. I want to be present for Robin as a dad and turn up and be at the jiu-jitsu matches, at our school plays, at the parent-teacher conferences. And it doesn't matter how busy it is, how that new sale, that new deal, it doesn't matter.
That's your scorecard.
Whereas in the past, I'd have been like, I'm too busy. I've got this email I need to send. I've got this event coming up. And I only started doing that maybe like a year ago. Even I didn't take a holiday for 6 years, Pat. I know, it's bad. I worked all summer. And this was the first summer where I took 2 weeks off. And it was just amazing to wake up with Robin and Natasha and be like, what are we going to do today as a family? And the quality time that I spent with her, I came back so much more energized, so much more enthusiastic. And even Shane said, like, who are you? Like, where's the way? Like, so yes, it was busy and we got a crazy amount of stuff going in September, but I took the time. I was really happy that we did that as well. So love that. Talk about the power of stories. We said it at the beginning of the episode, but talk about the power of stories and how our brain works, because I'm sure you went into the research on that.
I did. So two things I teed up the book. Before I even go into the fables, there's two things. One, I got that courage to talk for LinkedIn through and to write through two nudges that said, look, take your lessons and write about it, share it to the world. And if you can help one person, that achieves your purpose. Because my purpose, and I write it on my LinkedIn profile, I share it with people, is to leave the world better than I found it, to be kind, and to give more than I get. So I found courage to write more and to speak more. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, we called her Nanny. She was so dynamic and so ahead of her time that she created a lasting impression on me. She would tell a story like, I am like majority Irish, like 80-something% Irish. And she would tell a story, and I'm the baby out of 8, and we'd all be captivated. And she would pause and her arms would wave, and then she would like land the plane and she'd tell the moral of her story. And it just, I love a great story. And so I talk about Nanny. And then I wanted to know why I was captivated by stories, and Nancy Drew and Disney and all, and Netflix. Like, why do we all like binge watch? It's because our brains react. So when you tell a story from beginning, middle, and end, kind of what you did with me, Chris, just now about your vacation, about the decisions during COVID with your company, it releases chemicals in our brains, me as an audience. And I start putting myself in your shoes. It's like, don't go in the woods. There's bad things in the woods. All of a sudden you're telling a story about Little Red Riding Hood. And I'm like, I'm her. And I'm like, I don't want to go in the woods. Like, I don't want to wear that red cape. I'm worried about grandma. What do I do? And so you get this compassion element. I feel connected to you. I lean into the conversation and I find a commonality with you. So we get bonded through stories, through chemicals in our brains. And the more personal it is, the tighter the relationship.
Yeah.
And so I looked at all this research because it was a foundation when I was thinking about belonging back in 2016. I realized that D&I was necessary but not sufficient. Like, we have to belong, and stories unlock belonging faster than anything. And I'm like, why is that true? And so I just shared the research I learned on this, but a story is pretty magical.
It's unbelievable, and we don't make space enough in our organizations for those conversations to happen, or in another way, sometimes don't create the psychological safety to have those conversations. And where that unlocked for me and Shane was, we went to a leadership retreat we got invited to by a guy called Nick Craig. He wrote a book, I think it was Leading with Purpose was the book. And as part of that, the first thing you do on day one, which I was like blown away by, is you do your crucible stories. So you're in a group of 4 people. You've never met them before. So I'm sitting there, and I was kind of put with like an entrepreneurial group. And I was I'll be honest, I was like crazy imposter syndrome. 2 of them were billionaires. that I was sitting next to. So I'm sitting there like I've just started my company. I'm still living in my spare room, like doing this business as well. And all of a sudden, you're now sharing your crucible stories of some of the most challenging, difficult moments in your life. But the bond that I built with those people over that group over the 2 days, that was 7 years ago, and I'm going to meet one of those people in a few weeks in Miami. After our event we've got in New York, in New Jersey. So I still I'm so connected because we bonded over that shared experience as well. And I never thought that, I'll be honest. I was walking into that thinking, oh, we don't have time to go to this meeting, Shane. We've got a lot of work to do. We're really, really busy. And I came out of it with a completely, my purpose statement is to be the unbreakable artist that dances you to life. And there's a lot of meaning behind that. Unbreakable artist, I grew up as an artist. And unbreakable artist is kind of like my version of challenging the status quo, always trying to disrupt ourselves as HR leaders and remain competitive and innovative. So unbreakable artist is what that means. And then dances you to life. I used to be a dancer, as I mentioned to you before. And dances you to life is the analogy for helping grow and develop talent. My passion for growing and develop talent dances you to life. So I use those words because they mean a lot to me and that I connect with those. So that, so like, I completely get it. And like those stories over those 2 days, which then carved out our purpose statements, it was just game changer, absolute game changer. And Shane and I didn't realize when we came together, he was in a different group, they put us in a different group. When we came back and Shane and I shared our stories with each other, bearing in mind, I've known Shane since I was 4 years old. So you'd think I know everything about him. I didn't. And I learned that half of the things that he was focusing on the business was draining him, taking away energy, and vice versa. But all the things that were draining energy for him, I loved. And vice versa for him. So all of a sudden we were like, what have we been doing for the last 3 years? And we completely reshifted our focus as co-founders. And that next year we 4x our revenue. Because I was focusing on sales, marketing, creative, storytelling, things that really give me energy. And he was like, I love production, finance, and operations. And I was like, I don't want to do any of that stuff as well. But it was through our stories that came out as well. So I just wanted to share that with you.
You have a story.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
You're forever changed. That relationship is forever changed because of a story.
Yeah.
And so I hope with the fables and folktales, Chris, that you'll learn some new ones like you did. Mm-hmm. You will figure out your own moral of the story. I give you tips and tricks like tools to prompt yourself to do the work. And at the very last chapter, there's a workbook to craft your own story.
Oh, amazing.
Like what are your values and your motivators? Like take a stab at your personal scorecard. So you'll see my scorecard in there. You'll see my Goldilocks in there. You'll see examples. And, I want it to be something that puts you on a personal quest to be your best self.
Wow. It's Pat, I'm so excited for everyone to grab a copy of the book. I think no matter what role you are in the organization or just in general in life, this is so powerful for anyone, wherever they are in their personal journey and career journey. I wish I kind of did something like that sooner, to really think about that, because as you said in the very beginning, sometimes it feels like work's being done to us. You go over here, you tapped on the shoulder, you're like, oh, I kind of just have to do it because that's how the only way I can progress. That's not always the story. That's not always the case. And a lot of us learn that later in our career. I learned that I kind of became empowered maybe 10 years into my career to take charge of that and go, actually, I'm not waiting for the tap on the shoulder or waiting for someone to develop me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it myself. But I wish I kind of had a more foresight earlier in my career, like a resource like your book, to help me think about that a little bit differently, about how I do that, if that makes sense. Yeah. Are you going to make you need an animated series, Pat? You need do you have artwork in there?
Yes. Oh, I forgot to mention that.
Oh, I was like, you can't not have artwork in there.
I have artwork. Okay. I have artwork. So you and I both are artists. Like a lot of dyslexics are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
But the one So on my Goldilocks journey, I worked at a company called Plantronics, and I got to meet a gentleman named Darren Caddis. And Darren was the chief designer for Plantronics headsets. He was the head designer of BMW motorcycles and Indian motorcycles. Like the guy is legit designer, creator. He's also dyslexic and just an amazing human being. And when we worked together, he would do these daily doodles and draw pen and ink drawings. He'd do these amazing sketches. One of my goodbye gifts from him was this a portrait of me with all these statements that people would say describing me. It was really cute. And one day, like he was doing a whole year, every day, a daily doodle, and he would post it. These amazing pen and ink drawings. And when I envisioned this book, I wanted to reimagine the visual of the fable, of the folktale. And so I called Darren up. I said, Darren, I would love it if you were the illustrator for my book.
Wow.
And I just went simple pen and ink. I want you to read my story, my take of the tortoise and the hare, the crow and the pitcher, the elephant. And I want you to draw for me and make these fables come to life through a picture and illustration. And he did. They were so good that the publisher Wiley goes, can he draw a few more drawings? Like your prologue about storytelling and the power of storytelling. Can you draw a picture of something there? So he drew a portrait of me, because I always wear my sneakers and my dresses, as the storyteller. I have a book and there's like people around me. And
that's so cool.
It is so cool. And then the acknowledgments in the back, I made him do a self-portrait. So there's 3 folks that helped me with the book, because it was just, I've never done it before. And so I had Darren, I had this woman named Bryn help me, and Mav. And so I said, here's their photos. Can you draw a caricature? So the 3 of them together, right above the acknowledgement. So Darren is super special. He's the illustrator of the book. I hope you love the pictures.
I'm so excited about that, because that's again how I connect as well. So I can't wait to see those. Have you posted any of those doodles on LinkedIn?
Not yet. I'm about to do one. I know. So I'm going to do one soon, because I'm going to talk about the scorecard, the personal scorecard, and announce my transition into a new gig, and show you the tortoise and the hare picture that he drew. And so I'm going to start doing these mini series of his drawings.
I was thinking about it while you were saying. I was like, please tell me that's part of the plan, and then link that back to the book as well. Honestly, I'm so excited for you. We spoke so long ago, and you really supported for us when me and Shane first started the company, and it brings me so much joy to see you living your purpose and bringing this to life, even though you never planned on it. Sometimes those are the things that when you sort of seek discomfort and put yourself out there, it's magic. It doesn't feel like that at the time, but it can be magical. So for everyone listening, the books, so is it pre-orders right now, Pat, or is it out
Pre-orders now?
Pre-orders now.
You can get it on October 29th. You can order it on Barnes & Noble or Amazon. You can look on my LinkedIn profile and get the links, or Wadors.com. I have a website now.
Oh, look at you.
Can you believe that? I have a website.
Look at you. Wait, did you say you got Wadors.com?
Yes.
That's cool. Sorry, that's really random, but that's a bit of a flex right there. Because okay. Anyways, it's going off topic. So for everyone listening, wherever you're listening, watching, however you're consuming the content right now, the link's below to grab a copy of the book. They'll always be there below. Also, make sure you go and follow Pat on LinkedIn. There'll be a link to a LinkedIn profile there, because obviously you're going to be sharing some of those mini series and the doodles and stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing those. And if you haven't already done so, Pat, make sure you do that as part of a newsletter, a LinkedIn newsletter, because then people can subscribe to it and then get weekly updates, or whenever you release a new LinkedIn newsletter, it'll be great to just a bit of advice on how to do that. But I'm so excited to share this with everyone, and I wish you all the best in the new role and the book. And let's not wait another 8 years.
Please don't. Let's make it at least an annual party, something.
Thanks a lot, Pat. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.